pillbox, and then a summary of the application to commemorate the pillbox, and then we'll go through an overview of the relevant commemorative rules guiding this hearing, and then on to the preliminary staff findings that were conducted in the past few months. And then I'll go over these public hearing requirements, and then the next steps of the process that will follow after the public hearing. Then we'll go into the public hearing itself, beginning with the instructions, and then we'll proceed to receive comments. So the downtown baseball park, also known as the Pillbox because of its small size, was a historic baseball park located on the northwest corner of 12th and Robert Street. It was used from 1903 to 1910 by the St. Paul Saints minor league team and as the frequent home of a significant all-black team named the St. Paul Gophers, also called the St. Paul Colored Gophers. At the time, professional baseball remained segregated, with organized leagues excluding Black players until the 1940s. However, independent Black teams, like the Gophers, played against both amateur and professional white teams, sometimes integrating outside talent for special matchups. In its later years, the Pillbox was a key home for the Colored Gophers, who faced the Saints in 1907. Star pitcher and future Negro National League founder Andrew Rube Foster played with the Gophers, even throwing a no-hitter in 1908. They continued playing at the Pillbox until the park was abandoned in 1910, leading to the team's decline. Beyond baseball, the Pillbox hosted events such as speed skating in winter and professional wrestling in summer. Today, the site is occupied by a laboratory building for the Minnesota Department of Health and Agriculture, located near the Spaghetti Junction. So a summary of the application. So on December 18, 2024, Cardboard staff received an application to add a new commemorative artwork of the state capitol grounds for the Pillbox from Stu Thornley of the Haysale Hall chapter of Society of American Baseball Research, who is here with us this afternoon. The full application can be accessed via the Cardboard website. The link to the website is provided on the screen. Cardboard is currently processing this application according to Minnesota Rules 2400, 2703, Subpart 2, 3, 4, and 5. And again, these rules can be accessed via the link on the screen. For the application to be reviewed by the board, it must meet all of the conditions in Minnesota Rules 2400, 2703, Subpart 2, which state that there has to be documented public support of the artwork. The artwork has to have lasting statewide significance for Minnesotans. The artwork must be respectful of the diversity of Minnesotans, and viewing the artwork must provide a rich experience to broaden the understanding of Minnesota's shared history, heritage, and culture. So in order for the application to be reviewed by the board, all these conditions have to be met within the application. So per the rules, Cardboard staff reviewed and analyzed the application when it was received back in December and resubmitted in January. And so far, staff have determined that the application meets all the conditions in Subpart 2 of the rules. And a report of these findings can be found on the Cardboard website. So today, this hearing is being held to gather input from the public on whether the application meets all the conditions in Minnesota Rules 2400, 2703, Subpart 2, for the board to consider the request and move it forward in the review process. Once again, the conditions that we are looking at this afternoon are displayed on the screen. And also note that this hearing is being conducted in addition to a 35-day public comment period that we had open from March 31st to May 5th. So after this public hearing is conducted, there are several steps that the application will have to undergo according to the commemorative works process, but I'll just mention a few of the immediate steps. So after this public hearing, staff will summarize the comments received during this hearing and the just ended public comment period and make a recommendation to the board on whether all the conditions in Subpart 2 have been met. And then after that, the board will meet to review the request, the comments and recommendations, and host another public hearing, then vote on whether the conditions have been met. If the board votes yes, then a site selection study will begin with the applicant, cupboard staff, and architectural advisors. And then following that, the board will meet again to review and vote on the proposed location that will be identified by the applicant together with the cupboard staff and advisors, and then meet and provide another opportunity for public input at that meeting. So now to the actual public hearing. For those in person, you may come forward to the commenting table and provide your comment. And if you would like, you may state your name and your affiliation with the public, with the Pillbox application, if any. And if you're online, you may raise your hand as demonstrated on the screen. And when called upon, you may unmute your mic to speak. If you're online using a device, you follow the same process, though the interface may look different as demonstrated on the screen. If you wish, you may also submit written comments to my email address at tina.chimuzo@state.mn.us. And we also we're welcoming comments via mail, which are supposed to be submitted by today's date. And for any other additional information on the application, you may visit the cupboard website as shown on the screen. And with those few remarks, we can now begin the public hearing process. Thank you. So at this point, we welcome any comments that may be over.
My name's Dave Landy, and I'm a member of the Hawes Hall chapter, Sabre chapter, along with Stu Thornley. And Tina sent you an email a couple of weeks ago outlining the reasons why I believe this plaque should be supported and eventually installed. There's 4 criteria in there as outlined by the state requirements. And I believe the application that Stu put together explained all 4 of those. And I wrote the email also in support of what Stu had written and the fact that it's my opinion and belief that the application does meet all 4 requirements. It's obviously of interest to anybody interested in the history of baseball, which Sabre chapter is. Sabre is a long established organization of about 50 years, supporting baseball in all of its various many forms in the United States. So it has support from the local Sabre chapter. Also, it does support the diversity requirements as outlined in the application in terms of this is a ballpark that was used by at the time by the segregated teams, both black and white, and they often played each other. It does add to the history of St. Paul and the history of baseball in Minnesota and in St. Paul. So again, I won't go into a lot of detail as outlined in my email I sent you, but I believe that this would be a real good step to go forward and memorialize that history of baseball in St. Paul. So, any questions?
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
We have any? Oh, please go ahead.
Do they have anything out there? Cyber World?
And Bob.
Not yet. Please go ahead.
He looks better than me with a tie on. Let him go first.
You can go ahead and then.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm Stu Thornley of the Halsey Hall chapter of Society for American Baseball Research. And appreciate all the Tina and Jesse, Eric, Peter, and helped me to navigate through the system. I've done this before with other historic baseball parks, Lexington Park in St. Paul, Nicollet Park in Minneapolis, where the process was a little more streamlined because it was on private property where the plaque went. And here I understand the need for some process for it. So I appreciate everybody's help in getting it through. I believe we've hit the different areas and the requirements as far as what is the public demand for such artwork. I hope there were comments coming in as well during the public comment period. I know the media is interested. John Shipley of the Pioneer Press did a story on it, and Peter Cox of Minnesota Public Radio. And then I was driving back from up northern Minnesota today and got a call from Josie Grove Albertson of the Minneapolis Star Tribune. She had seen this and found it interesting. So I don't know if that, how much that goes for public demand, but people find these things interesting. I've certainly found all of the different types of state commemorations interesting, of all different types. And understanding with Peter's help too, that this is not just a ballpark, it's part of the urban fabric. And how can we tie this in too? With, okay, there was an interesting ballpark that stood there. Thinking about what the area was like before the freeway went through and sort of cut it off from downtown. It was sort of a seamless thing to Central Park all the way up in the Capitol. Get into our neighborhoods like Rondo, the churches that were around that, and were the reason that they didn't play Sunday baseball because of objections from the churches and what they did with that. So there's still a lot to be done on the road. What is any kind of a marker going to say? And that's where certainly want to get other people involved. The artwork, I don't know if that's, you've got experts on that, on what would be a good thing. But Frank White has been involved in this process. Frank grew up in the Rondo neighborhood, and he's done a lot with sports in general, but with baseball, Black baseball history, the hidden history of baseball. His dad played basketball, and he's captured these things, and so the hidden history is getting out there. That to me is what I think is really important. It's pretty easy to read about our mainstream teams, but any opportunity there is to pull out some of that that's been underground for so long and is emerging, and this is one more way to do it.
Thank you, Stu, for your comment. We had a hand raised online. Ed Edmonds, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm the current president of the Halsey Hall chapter of the Society of American Baseball Research, and Dave mentioned the 50-year history. The organization nationally has a little over 7,500 members. The Halsey Hall chapter is, we think, the strongest of all, and noted by comments that I sent in my letter to Tina that we've been the only chapter twice recognized with the Most Valuable Player Award that was recently established by the National Society of American Baseball Research. I just wanted to add a couple of things with respect to Part C, with respect to the diversity of this proposal to Minnesotans. I think it gives a very good opportunity to have some artwork that explains a little bit about the segregated nature of baseball. Unfortunately, it's part of its history, but the fact that the Pillbox was a ballpark used by both African Americans and Caucasian Americans playing baseball creates an opportunity to present to the public a little bit of an educational chance to understand how that was at the time and the progress that's been made in the future. And there were a couple of very important African Americans, Rube Foster that was mentioned, and Marshall, another early baseball, football, hockey player in history here in the Twin Cities. The other thing I kind of wanted to mention was that with respect to statewide significance is that Minnesota has a 100+ year history of town ball that relates to both the large urban communities and some of the really smaller towns throughout the state. And this 100-year history of town ball that still exists today, played by citizens of each of these communities across the state, I think points to really a very strong statewide history of playing baseball and interest in baseball that really brought everybody from those communities into playing the game. And that was an entertainment value to the citizens of all of those smaller communities, as well as the larger cities like St. Paul and Duluth and Minneapolis. So thank you for the opportunity to kind of address this proposal and to say that it has a strong support of the other two members that are obviously in the room from the Halsey Hall chapter, but from the board and the general membership, which is close to 200 here in the Twin Cities.
Thank you, Ed, for your comment. Do we have any other comments online? We do not have any raised hands online, so just I guess give it time and see if there will be any other people joining us.
Do the people that just joined know how to raise their hand, maybe, or make sure they know that?
Yeah, I'll unmute. You can let them know.
All right.
Unmute them all.
Right. So you're just gonna be unmuted in case you need to make a comment and you're not able to find the mute button. So you're just gonna go ahead and unmute. Thank you. Maybe we can begin with Josie Albertson Grove. Just will unmute you, and if you don't have any comment, you can let us know.
Oh, she's a reporter with the Star Tribune. She's there.
All right, thanks, Josie. And then Komorowski.
So I can't unmute them. I can mute them, but I can't unmute them.
Okay, let me try and
They're on
unmute from my
right
end.
now.
Bob Komorowski. I'm also with Sabre Twin Cities Halsey Hall chapter. I would just mention to you should be directed to the email that I had sent, I believe, last month in support of this here, though. And I think what I had stressed in there is that this is a late Victorian entertainment center of the Twin Cities, and you know, it's not extant at all, though. And I think that we need to give recognition to those entertainment facilities that are long gone, that served the thousands, if not tens of thousands of you know, Minnesotans that not only attended events there, but remember, this was also used as an ice skating facility in the time. So I would just, once again, thanks for the opportunity for us to comment, and I would direct your attention to my prior email. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
I think just maybe explain what we'll do with the comments, and I don't, you know, we don't have to take everybody's time up. can close it if we don't have any more people showing. We have to wait too long here.
Sure. Okay. So I'm just gonna once again go through a quick overview of what's gonna happen next after the public comment period. And then if there are no additional comments, we'll close the public comment, for this public hearing. All right, so as mentioned earlier, after we have received the public comments from this hearing, Cardboard staff are going to prepare a written summary of all the comments that have been received in this hearing, as well as the public comment period that ran through March 31st to May 5th. And then after those have been summarized, then Cardboard staff will make a recommendation to the board on whether the conditions in the Minnesota rules 2400 to 703 Subpart 2 have been met for the board to accept the application and move it forward in the review process. And then once that's done, the board will meet and host a public hearing and also to consider the requests, the recommendations from Cardboard staff, as well as the public comments. And then the board will vote on whether all the conditions in the rules have been met for the application to move forward in the review process. There's no date set yet for that board meeting. There are several steps that may be required to take place before the application can be presented at the board. And then if the board votes yes, then the applicant will be notified about the decision, and then a site selection study will commence. And this site selection study will take place together with the applicant, the Cardboard staff, and architectural advisors. And then whatever the proposals that will be decided upon by these three parties will be presented again to the board. And then the board will consider the proposal for the site and hold a meeting, and at that meeting, another public hearing will be held to gather input from the public about the site selection. And then after that, the board will vote on the site. And if the board votes yes to the site, then the application will move forward in the process, and that will include a design review process. So in a nutshell, those are the steps that will follow this public hearing. I don't know if there are any questions or comments for that. Right. I don't know if there are any questions online or comments. There are none. I guess we can close this public hearing. And thank you all for your participation. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, Eric Sidalik-Dow or Peter Masti, and we have the contacts on the screen. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
very much.
Thank you.